Hello and welcome to this week's video. Mixing convincing ginger and tan fir is much more challenging than it first appears. In this video, I'll show you why thinking in terms of temperatures and values rather than simply oranges and browns can transform your colour mixing. I'll also share the simple palette I use to paint everything from rich ginger cats to soft tan dogs with harmony and confidence. I'll be using this recent ginger cat commission as my example. Let's jump straight in. Number 1, why ginger and tan are harder than they look. Today I want to talk about something that comes up again and again in animal painting, how to mix for ginger cats and tan dogs. And I want to start by saying something that might surprise you. Ginger and tan fir is actually much harder to get right than most painters expect. On the surface, it feels like familiar territory. Warm colours, oranges and browns, nothing too exotic or complicated. But then they paint it and something is wrong. It looks flat or artificial, or the colour is too intense and garish, or it tips into muddy brown and loses all its warmth and life. And the reason for that is almost always the same. They are thinking about ginger and tan as a colour rather than as a range of temperatures and values that happen to sit within a warm colour family. Ginger fir is not just orange, tan fir is not just brown. Both of those descriptions are the label your brain puts on what it sees before it really looks. And as we have talked about before, painting the label is always going to give you a flat, unconvincing result. The other thing that catches painters out is the sheer range they are dealing with, because ginger and tan fir does not stay in one place. It moves from rich, intense ginger all the way through to warm grey, depending upon where the light is hitting and where the shadows are falling. That range from ginger to grey is enormous. What I want to share today is a very simple palette that I have developed for exactly this challenge. Number 2, the range you are actually dealing with. Let's take this recent painting commission as an example. Here is the reference photo. Firstly, the cat is backlit, so we move from some very muted oranges to some much more saturated ones. You cannot do this with all warm colours. If I go too warm with my colours, my final piece will look muddy. If I use too much white, it will look chalky. I therefore need a balance of warm and cool colours for this to work. Number 3, why a simple palette works better than a complex one. So we now understand the range we're dealing with. The natural instinct might be to reach for a lot of different colours to describe all of that variety. I want to make the case for the opposite approach, because in my experience, a small, carefully chosen palette will always outperform a large, complicated one for this kind of subject. The reason for this is harmony. When every mix in your painting comes from the same small family of colours, they all have a natural relationship with each other. The highlights, the midtones and the shadows are all speaking the same colour language, and that consistency is what gives the painting its unity and believability. When you use lots of different colours across a painting, you are constantly introducing new colour relationships that have to be managed and balanced. The more colours you add, the harder that becomes, and the more likely you are to end up with a painting that feels disjointed or inconsistent. Simple is not the same as limiting. Simple is powerful. Number 4, my palette, what each colour is doing. Let's have a look at the colours on my palette. I am using yellow ochre light, transparent yellow oxide, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, transparent red oxide, viridian, ultramarine deep and titanium zinc white. I have mixed a number of other colours. These are a black red and a black green. This is my rich black for my darkest darks. A purple that leans red and 2 oranges. The core colours that you need to paint ginger tan successfully are very few. These are my black red, my 2 oranges, my viridian and my white. I will also need to switch between my 2 yellows depending upon the value of my mix. To control the value of my colours, I will use my black, red and my green for darker values, and to lighten, I have the choice of my yellow ochre light or my white. I also have to consider the temperature of these colours too. My black red is warm, my yellow is warm, my green and my white are cool. My 2 oranges control my temperatures. This red is more saturated than this red because it contains my cadmium red plus my yellow ochre light, which is semi-opaque. I will use my transparent yellow oxide when I am trying to push my dark values more yellow, because the transparency of this paint does not affect dark mixes, like my semi-opaque yellow, which will lighten. I will always work with complementaries, so my green plus my red. I will either mix this black red plus this black green together, or this red plus green together, or this orange plus this green together. When I want to change the value of these two, I can add my black red as well. Where I want to lighten any of these mixes, I can add my white or my yellow ochre. Where my colours are more muted, I add more green and white. Where they are more saturated, I add more yellow and orange. I can also add directly to these mixes if I need to push them warmer further with my cadmium red or my alizarin crimson. A straight mix of this black red plus green plus white will give me a grey. I can also mix this grey into any of my ginger tan mixes if I need to push them cooler. I would encourage you to make some colour charts with this range of colours, as you can paint many tan animals with these colours and go very cool as well, but the combination always works. To sum up, ginger and tan fur is harder than it looks. Approach it as a range of temperatures and values rather than a single colour, and you will immediately make better mixing decisions. The range you are dealing with runs all the way from intense saturated ginger at one end to grey at the other. Your palette needs to be able to take you on that whole journey. A simple palette will always outperform a complicated one. Harmony, control and repeatability come from restraint, not from adding more colours. You only need 5 core elements: your dark red-black mix, your 2 oranges, your viridian and your white. Everything else is supporting those 5. Viridian is your most powerful tool. It controls both value and temperature simultaneously. More green pushes towards grey, less green pushes towards warmth and saturation. Your 2 oranges control temperature and intensity. Know which one to reach for and why before you mix. White cools and desaturates. Always ask yourself whether yellow ochre light is a better lightener before you reach for your white. The whole system is built on complementaries: warm against cool, red-orange against green. That relationship is what gives every mix its life and harmony. Make colour charts with this palette. The more familiar you are with how these colours behave together, the more instinctive your mixing will become. This palette is simple, logical, and it works every time for ginger cats, tan dogs, and everything in between. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. You can find lesson opportunities on my website sarahhallidayart.com and also examples of my work. I am taking a short break, so we'll see you for the next video at the end of August. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.